How's it going, everybody? This podcast is brought to you by RYYZN Make Life Workout, a health, self-development, and lifestyle platform building a passionate community of knowledge seekers, creative dreamers, and future leaders.
For details on the latest RYYZN event that will feature expert speakers in the field of self-development and growth, check out www.ryz-workout.com.
That's www.ryz-workout.com. Enjoy the show. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the High Frequency Club podcast. My name is Marwin.
And I'm Shenae. We're here talking all things self-development, growth, and mindset.
In this week's episode, we sit down with Nicky Lord with over 17 years of experience in the fitness industry as a group fitness instructor and now club manager at Les Mills down here in Wellington. We also filmed this in a library, so we had to put our masks on, and you might hear a little bit of background noise by all the other patrons.
We also touch on how Nikki goes about managing her perfectionism and how her view on time management and decision making has changed quite a bit since having her daughter.
She also shares her insights on how she manages imposter syndrome and that nervousness and anxiety that she might feel before she goes and teaches a class. You know, after all these years, she still feels it, and that's something that we can relate to as well. She shares her tools on how she manages that and actually uses that as her strength.
Yeah, really great to hear about a lot of her processes as well. So tune in, let us know what you think, and make sure you're following along at the High Frequency Club.
Awesome. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, so if you guys are watching this right now, we are in the library.
Right there?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Awesome. And yeah, obviously at any point, I'd love to talk about your injury in terms of how you are managing it, because there's a lot of people that are injured and sometimes are super impatient with it.
Oh, yeah.
You can go as deep or as little as you want with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. So we know who you are. This is the lady that recruited us both for Les Mills, but for the people that don't know you, who is Nicky Lord? How would you describe her and what did she do?
Oh man. Okay, so I was born in Masterton and grew up in Martinborough. Do you know where that is?
Yes, like North Wellington?
Yeah, so over the hill, over the Rimataka, in the Wairarapa. And I moved from there when I was quite young. My parents separated when we were about 5 or 6 and then moved to the Hawke's Bay. So I pretty much was brought up in the Hawke's Bay. And then I actually moved back down here to Wellington, and I did a stint of about 4 or 5 years, which is where I started my group fitness career down here. And then I moved back to the Hawke's Bay, and I was there for a number of years before I moved to Auckland, which is when I met you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose growing up, my big passion was marching. I think I've spoken to you about this before. I was so heavily involved in it. It would take up all of my time outside of school, but I loved it. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, you couldn't not get me doing it. It was just my absolute passion. And I spent a number of years basically traveling around the country, competing every weekend in competitions throughout the summer, and then in the winter we would train. And the thing with marching is the training is intense, like really intense. And then I basically, in my late teens, I then got recruited into the national team. Well, it's kind of like a national team. It's really hard to explain, but they were renowned as the national team called Lochiel Marching Drill Team, and we would basically represent New Zealand overseas. But in New Zealand, we would compete against all the other teams in New Zealand. And so they were the national champion team, something like 35 times out of 40 or something. You know, it's crazy how respected they are in the field. And then, basically then I travelled the world with them for a number of years, not competing, but performing in military tattoos around the world. And then I found my love for group fitness somehow in amongst all that. And then I became, an instructor for Les Mills.
Awesome. And now you're the club manager.
And now I'm the club manager, which is nuts.
Did you see your path heading this way when you first ever started in group fit?
Never. No. When I started in group fit, I was a travel agent. And then I moved into banking, actually. So I was a banking advisor for a number of years. And then and I was doing my teaching on the side and realised that this is what I loved, was the classes, and I was working really long hours, and it would often impact on my ability to teach. So then I decided, you know what, I want to go back to study, and I went back to uni and did a degree in sport management and coaching through Massey, and it was through then that I started a group fitness role in a club in Napier, group fitness management role, and I took on that for a number of years while I studied, and I loved it, like I really did. But the whole reason of me doing the degree was actually to become a PE teacher, because I wanted to teach in schools, because I thought that would be really good for my future, you know, if you have families and all that sort of stuff, and I'd still be able to teach on the side. And then, gosh, what happened? I think I went through a bit of personal stuff in the Hawke's Bay and decided I needed to get out, and so I decided to move to Auckland for 1 year. That was it. I was going to Auckland for a year just to teach and kind of improve on my skills and finish my degree. And while I was up there, the role at Britomart came available, and so a number of people had said, hey, you should apply for this. And I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. You know, never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd get it. And then, here I am.
And how long were you GFM at Brito for?
6 years.
Yeah, that's right. You had a
6, 7
long,
years.
long
It was
reign.
a long reign,
Yeah. Just going back, you know, you said you went to marching and then you pretty much became like the face of Jam as well, right? What was that transition? How did you transition from marching to then dance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I ended up giving up marching because I had a run-in with somebody in that, and I decided to kind of give it up. And for me, when you were at the top of what you could do, I wouldn't just go and get involved in it again at a lower level. I know that sounds really harsh, but it's just different. It's very different. And so I kind of gave it up for a while, and I'd started seeing somebody who was teaching body jam at the time. That's how I got involved in teaching. And then, I just, all of a sudden, my old passion was filled with a new passion. And that's honestly what happened. I think I probably would have eventually gone back to marching, and I did for a little while there, but I'd filled it with something else that I still really enjoyed. And the sport of marching these days is not like it was when I was a kid. It's not at all. But I did go back in 2000, I did go back and compete with a team in the Hawke's Bay, a local team, for a couple of years. And they were still at a good level, definitely, but not at the standard that I was marching at. But it was a good opportunity for me to get back into the sport and just try and help out with some of the younger ones as well. And then I did go and do a trip in 2013. I went to Europe and did the Edinburgh Tattoo, which is like, in the world of marching, that's the biggest event that we could do. So I did do that. But then all of a sudden I couldn't commit to marching because teaching was just taking up all of my time. So I haven't been back since.
Yeah, right.
I want to see some footage of this marching.
I can show you
some videos, please.
I've got lots. In fact, the other thing when I was a kid, actually, this is quite funny, and it probably is a little bit controversial saying, but one of my idols growing up was Michael Jackson. I loved him as an artist. There's no denying, he was incredible.
Yeah.
And I followed him and his career. I had posters, all his tapes, everything. I'd record everything on TV. my mum would get to the point where she'd help me and she'd slow the video down so I could learn the moves. Anyway, so the highlight of my marching career was when I could fuse the two together. And we do in marching, there's a number of different routines that we do, and one of them is called a Gala March, and once a year at the Nationals we will present this kind of stage performance, and there's still marching involved, but it's very theatre-like, I suppose. And so our theme was all Michael Jackson, and I got to choreograph this whole routine to Michael Jackson, and we dressed up. I dressed as Michael Jackson, and the team behind me were my dancers, and it was like it ended up on Sky Sport.
Wow,
That's awesome.
I want to see that video.
I can find it.
The thing that's consistent between marching and then jam afterwards is that the essence of performance.
Yeah.
Right. How do you think that has played in your development and success as a group fitness instructor? Because I think that's something that is underrated when it comes to the way I see it, coming from a theatre background. Group fitness is a performance. It's immersive theatre. They're taking part of it, rather than it's a workout. It's much bigger than that.
Yes.
I find.
Totally.
How do you think your performance aspect and your experience in it has played a part in your group fitness career?
It's funny because I think it's played a huge part. I always get really anxious getting up in front of people.
Same,
I do.
same.
I absolutely freak out about it. But when I'm in the moment, I enjoy it. It's so hard to explain. But it's more the experience and being a part of something big. I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but it has helped me hugely because it's throughout my years in marching, we've constantly been put in that place, like you're competing, we were being judged, so we would get out on that field and spectators everywhere watching you. But when we'd go overseas, we would perform in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people. Like, it's a lot of people to be in front, so you get used to it, so it's not so frightening, but it still is. It's so hard to explain.
I know what you mean, because I still have that Tuesday 12-10 class, right? And I have a client normally at 10 and 11, and the anxiety always starts to creep in, always at the same time. No matter how many times I've done that class, no matter how many times I've done that release, whether it's a new release or an old release, I still get the same amount of anxiety. I think for me, it's that. Actually, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest. And I was about to ask you, what do you think that is? Where does that anxiety come from? I've got little parts in my mind where I'm like, it's one, because I know that it's time to perform,
I was just going to say
it's really time to perform. It's really time to show up. It's time to tell a story, and I'm afraid that I might not be able to do that. There is that fear of failure, regardless of how many times, because sometimes I'll be in the staff room and I'm just confiding with someone, and they're like, how are you? I'm like, I'm nervous. And they're like, what do you mean? This is like your class, you've been doing this for fucking ages. And I'm like, it doesn't get any, I wouldn't say it doesn't get harder, it doesn't get any easier, I just cannot shake off the feeling. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, this is just how it's going to be, I'm not going to try to fight it. Like, how do you manage that anxiety, an hour or 2 hours out?
Actually, I got really good advice throughout my marching career, because I would get so nervous getting out on the starting blocks before we would start. Like, honestly, my insides were just butterflies. I'd be shaking, just so worried, because I wanted to do a good performance. I knew that deep down that was why I was feeling the way I was feeling, is because, one, I didn't want to let myself down, I didn't want to let my team down, I didn't want to let my coaches down. And I was a perfectionist, and I know that. I am a perfectionist, so for me it was the anxiety of, what if something goes wrong? And then the minute I would step off, I'd get in my zone, and all of that feeling was gone. And it's no different in teaching. I'm always the exact same, so anxious, and then as soon as I start, like, my intros are terrible because I hate that, but as soon as I start teaching, that whole feeling goes. But one thing that I was brought up on is to not let those nerves get the best of you, let them fuel you. And that when I was told that that's exactly what I've done, is when I get nervous, I go, okay, this is a good feeling. Because if I'm not nervous, I'm probably not going to perform as well because I don't care as much.
Yeah.
And that's how that's honestly how I've used it throughout my whole career. Yeah.
So true, because I think at times where I have tried to fight against it, I'm no longer actually thinking about what I'm meant to be doing when I'm performing to that group of people. I'm more focused on myself rather than creating that connection with whether it's with the music or with the people that are there, you know. And I think you're right, it is a big part of that anxiety is knowing that you have a big responsibility coming up, and that people have, and you say this all the time, that people have taken 30 minutes out of their day to get changed and come see you and work out with you. And that in itself is it's a privilege and a responsibility, you know? And it is that thing of you care.
Yes.
How do you manage do you still get it? Because how many years have you been teaching now?
10 years.
Do you still get it?
I still get it to some degree, and especially, and sometimes I'm like, why? Like, this is my regular class, I've had this for ages, and I think I still probably get it more so if you're covering, but I think same with you. I think I'm nervous because it means I care, and because I don't want to stuff up, and I want to do well and want to give a good workout. So yeah, I think I just try and take that as like, oh, it's a good thing that I'm nervous because it means I care. Whereas if I wasn't nervous, and I think the times I'm not nervous is if I'm a bit too relaxed and a bit too like meh, and not in the zone.
That's what I was just going to say, is I feel like when you're nervous, it means you're alert.
Yeah. There's a standard. There's a standard to hit, right?
Yeah.
I know you also took a little bit of a break because obviously you became a mother to Macy, and through chats that we've had with other instructors and leaders as well in our industry and company, is that a lot of people go through, you know, imposter syndrome. After your break of instructing, did you get that sense of feeling of imposter syndrome? Did you ever feel like, fuck, do I still have it? Even though you had all the evidence to know that, like, definitely it's in your fucking DNA pretty much now. How did you manage that? And how did you manage your own imposter syndrome?
I still have it. I'm not gonna lie. You're so, honestly, once I had her, you'd think, oh, just get back into it and everything, it would just carry on as normal. But it absolutely hasn't, and a big thing for me is I've been really injured, so I'm still not back at my capacity of what I was doing prior to having Mace, and so that's held me back. But not that I've admitted this before, but there is definitely imposter syndrome that's also holding me back from getting back into jam. I think. Like, I'm still working through rehab, and I need to get that part sorted because I don't want to get back into teaching and then make it worse and me be out for longer than needed. So I'm really trying to do this carefully. But there is this little voice in my head kind of saying, what's been over 2 years now since I've taught jam, you know, like, will I still have it?
Will my hips still move like they used to?
It's awful. It's an awful feeling. It really is. And it's something I'm just going to have to work through. I don't know how.
How do you manage it with your team? If you have an instructor who's suffering, let's say a new instructor, you're telling them to teach half a class. I remember this when I was a kid, and you're like, okay, cool, did one track, now it's time to do half the class, and I was like, oh my god. How do you manage it within your team if they've got imposter syndrome?
Good question. Well, I still do, am definitely training people. I think with newer instructors it's a little, well, maybe it's not different, but with newer instructors, for them, they need to build their confidence up, right? Like, the biggest thing for them that holds them back is confidence, and you're not going to get that unless you get experience. So you've got to go through the process of just teaching and teaching and teaching until you're confident with the basic skills to then sort of step out and sort of to be able to step out and be themselves a bit more. I know I've still got all that. That's the weird thing. I've got the skills, I've got, like, everything is still ingrained in me, but it's that feeling of, I don't know, I've had a baby, am I relevant anymore? It's those sorts of things. I don't know.
Oh, you're definitely still relevant, Nicky Lord.
And probably maybe even more so relevant to that group of people that are also mothers and have also, maybe feel like, oh, I can't dance like I used to, or I can't move like I used to, and have those limiting beliefs. Like you probably would tap into those kind of people more than the young ones that are like, woo, jam.
Yeah.
Oh, but even then, the return of Nicky Lord.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure the audience is waiting, but of course, fully understand that it's at your own pace. I think what you just said before about with new instructors, it's about getting that experience to build the confidence, and like going back to us feeling the anxiety beforehand. Like you just gotta accept the fact that it's true instead of going against it. Actually go for it.
Yes.
You let it ride with you, because you're meant to be fucking nervous. Of course, this is new for you. Like it's not meant to be comfortable. Like it just sounds so logically simple, but at the time when we're, whether we're anxious, whether it's 100th class or fucking first class, we get that feeling. I think it is that what you just said, accepting it, this is a part of the process, and that you are meant to be nervous. It is a normal thing to be nervous.
Yeah. If you weren't, it would be a little weird, wouldn't it? You'd kind of think,
do you want to be here?
Yeah, do you care?
Do you care enough? I don't know. Yeah. It would be, I can't honestly tell you of any time where I've ever heard somebody say that, that they're not nervous.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think as you go on in your career, like I can honestly say I wouldn't get as nervous prior to my classes as I did when I first started. Like, absolutely not. But yeah, you like Shenae said before, if she goes to cover a class, or so it's when your environment changes, then all of a sudden it changes for me as well. I'm definitely like that if I'm covering for somebody, or I'm in a new environment, if I'm traveling and teaching to a class of people I don't know, all of a sudden you're out of your comfort zone, and then the anxiety does kick in at those points. But when I'm teaching my regular class week on week, I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near as nervous as I am in those moments.
The degree of it changes.
The degree,
but
it doesn't go.
Changes.
Yes.
Yeah, and the degree of your comfort zone also changes.
Yes.
Yeah, the more further you are away from your comfort zone, the higher the nervousness will be.
Yes.
And that is all normal, right? That is all normal. I think that's something, new instructors, it's important for them to flag that in themselves. In a sense, you're not meant to be calm, or you're not meant to be holding it all together beforehand.
It's like that your body's doing that whole fight or flight thing, isn't it, really? And if you harness them in the right way, it's just going to make you perform better.
It's getting into that slipstream of that thrill of it, But the hard part I find is when it's time to let that all go, And we always get that feedback. They're like, just be yourself. You've got the layer 2 sorted out. Everything is, you've got it. Just now it's time to be yourself. And that feedback is just so vague. And this is a conversation that we've been having quite recently with a lot of people. It's like, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be yourself? And how do you be yourself? How would you answer that question as a leader?
Yeah, that's thanks for throwing that one at me. No, honestly, I think because what happens, especially with newer instructors, is, everyone, we care a lot, right, about our class, and we want to give a really good performance. So often we hold back and we try and please. We're just trying to people please. And I was 100% I definitely did that for a long time. You just want to make sure that everyone is okay and you're pleasing every single person, where that's at the detriment to yourself, because then you're not being your 100% self.
Understood.
And then because you're on stage and you're performing, people often go to that place of just performing, and so it's not authentic. And you can see that. And so often we do say to people, just be yourself, because we can see you're just trying to perform. But it's a hard balance, because you do need to perform. That's what you're there to do as well. But you don't want to do it in a way where you're not authentically being you. So what we're trying to get people to do is just perform at your highest self, I suppose. Does that make sense?
It does, it does make sense. And there's the spectrum of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Going performing too much and performing too little, and it's almost as if to fully experience it, you have to go through both ends.
And I honestly feel like for me, I think the biggest change in my teaching happened when I actually went through a really rough time where I lost my stepdad. He was like a second father to me. He brought me up when my parents separated since I was a little girl, and when he passed away, or even leading up to that, it was a really hard time because he was so sick. I was travelling back and forward to the Hawke's Bay almost every weekend just to spend time with him. And I sit here and I say, when you get up, you need to care about your class. But I got to the point where I didn't care, and it's so hard for me to explain. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was I didn't care what people thought of me. There's a very big difference. I still cared about what I was going to deliver, and I still cared about my class. But all of a sudden, my walls dropped, and I didn't care about what people thought of me because I didn't have that capacity in myself either, if that makes sense. I tell you what though, that's when my teaching took a whole turn and just went on a whole nother level. And I got really comfortable in that space because I am a people pleaser, like I naturally am, but there are some moments when I just had to let go of that. And and my teaching just took definitely another turn because I would hold things back on stage because I was in the fear of what people would think of me. And so I'd just not try things.
Yeah, interesting. How would you teach if there was no one watching?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And it's a really hard thing to do because we care. We do care. But it just gave me a whole new level of confidence, and it gave me the confidence to start trying new things. Did they work all the time? No, I absolutely failed in a number of ways, but I was okay with that. And when you see the benefits from that, I could just see the difference in my classes as well, and there were people that were starting to come that wouldn't have come prior to that. So, I don't know if that helps. That was a very long-winded explanation.
You mentioned before that you are a perfectionist. And that perfectionist mindset is great because it gets all the little details down, right? You never skip a beat. And the other side of that coin is that sometimes we can get paralyzed by too much analysis. How do you manage when progress is more important than perfection?
Honestly, I don't know. It's something I've been definitely aware of for a long time, that I am naturally like that. And I think my marching has brought that out in me because you're judged on every single thing that you do. Like everything has to be perfect. So my whole drive was to be perfect. And it's really hard to try and balance that in terms of, because I'm super, super analytical of myself. Like it's just, I'm never happy with anything I do. And it's really hard. But I don't know, I'm trying to work through that, and I don't have any answers yet, but I have to keep sort of just looking at it from different lenses, I suppose. I don't really know how to answer that question.
It is tricky. I think
it's really hard.
Even as well, I think when, like you said, being quite self-analytical, I think it's natural doing something like being an instructor. It's natural to when we want to give ourselves feedback or review. We do look for the things like, I could have said that better, I could have done that better, I needed to do more work on this, versus be able to be like, oh, I did better than my last one. I recorded myself and I've actually improved here and this is better. And yeah, it's finding the balance, I guess, between the two a little bit.
But one tip I have given, I do give to a lot of new instructors, I hope I gave this to you guys as well, otherwise that's pretty bad. But
never.
I do say to my guys, when you first start out and we start filming you, keep it. Don't ever let go of it. And people, I don't want to see that, but you will want to see it later, because the progress that we make as an instructor through our journey is so, like, it's just minimal little things that will change, right? And so, but week by week we don't notice it, but year on year on year, you look back, you go, holy shit, was that me? And so I think that's one thing we absolutely have to do, is just to reflect back a year or two earlier, and you'll just then see that, oh, okay, actually I am making progress, but it's slow and it's okay. Yeah,
you're so right. We overestimate the progress that we can make in a week, but underestimate what we can do in like a year, and make that 5-10 years for you, you know? Yeah, that's so true.
And that does help with the perfection side of things, because, you know, in the moment you're just always like, just not good enough, I need to work on this, but when you do look back and see the change, you go, oh, okay, and it does give you that moment to sit back and actually understand the journey that you've taken, and that there has been a big shift.
Yeah, very true. Very true. You also mentioned, even before we started recording, that you know, you're still going through an injury at the moment. And I know a lot of people are listening, because sometimes, you know, we all have our pains and niggles, and when we're injured, we're just impatient. We just want to go gun-ho on it and get back into training. You know, how do you prioritize your rest and recovery, as well as managing your injury and wanting to go out there and, you know, get into it?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's been a huge challenge. Anytime I've had an injury in the past, I've been able to still work through it. So it's like you just manage it on the side, but you still teach. This has stopped me dead in my tracks. So not long after I had Macy, I fractured my knee, but it took the doctors a good 8 or 9 months to even just diagnose it before we could start on a rehab plan. So yeah, I've just been able to do nothing. And now I've invested in a really good PT down here who is really helping me, but has pulled me right back to basics, and I struggled with that. Like, he was like, stop all classes except you can do your cycle, but I was starting, after the diagnosis, I was like, okay, well, now that I know what I've done, let's try and start getting back into body jam. And he was just like, no. He's like, Nikki, just stop altogether, because I've just lost so much strength in my knee. Like, it's insane. I can't even walk up or down stairs without having to like push myself up. And so he's basically like, we just need to stabilize the knee first, and then start to re-strengthen it, and then you can, once we start getting you into pain-free movement first, then we'll work on strength, and then we'll start to just implement some more impact back into your training. So it's been a really slow process. With him, it took us probably at least another 8 weeks before I could even move pain-free in itself. Like, it was just, the pain was diluting, but it was still there. So it's been, gosh, how long now? 18 months? Macy's 18 months, yeah, so 18 months of no impact. I haven't been able to do any impact, but we're just starting to get to that place now where we're reintroducing that back into my training, but very slowly. And I know that, I think because of the extent of the injury and the length of time I've been off, I don't want to make that double.
Yes.
Like, I'll go back too soon and then have to have longer off.
I want to get back, and I want to get back in for the longevity. So I'm listening, and I'm doing everything that I'm being told to make that happen, so that I don't make it worse and could be out for a really long, like, probably that would end me.
I think that's always, if not that there's always a silver lining to injuries, but I think that's one of them, and that having to slow down and, like you said, go through all the basics again and sort of reconnect with your body and be able to feel like, wow, I actually am weaker, and that doesn't feel the same as the other side, and sort of going through all the basics and building yourself up slowly and understanding that whole process as you're going.
Like, my first training with him, he had me just doing backwards walking, and I was like, is this what my life has come to? I was like, really? But I just had to trust. I honestly just had to trust in the process, and I did. And I've seen some massive changes, so I've just got to keep going with it and know that, you know, I'll be back.
Yeah, it just goes back to what you're saying. It's that gradual change that sometimes we don't even see, especially when it comes to injuries. Especially with our type of personalities, we were just like, I just want to head straight in. I want to go into what I find fun.
Yeah.
You know? And it's one thing when the mind wants it, it's another when the body can't keep up.
It's 100%.
And that is fucking frustrating.
Yeah. And it's, honestly, having a baby has changed my whole perception of fitness, of everything really. Because yes, I was injured, but just even having her, I remember, must have been a couple of months after I had her, I thought, oh, I'm going to try and do a core class at home, right, in front of the TV to do Les Mills on Demand. And I taught the program. So I was like, we got this. And I sat down in front of the TV and tried to do the warm-up, and I couldn't do the warm-up. And I was like, what the hell? And you know, you do knee drops side to side. I always used to think, why do we do these? Like,
I don't feel anything.
I don't feel anything. But it's because I had no appreciation of actually where my body was at prior to having her and the strength that I had. And I always thought, I'm still not strong enough. I need to work on this, da-da-da. Then I got to the place where I was like, I just want my old body back. You know, it's insane. It really is insane.
I like how you touched on before about, you know, once you had Macy, things really started to change for you. Your perspective changed. How has, you know, your perspective on work-life balance changed now having a baby?
Oh, that has been a huge, huge transition because I feel my priorities are pulled in different directions. Prior to her, I mean, work was, oh my gosh, my life really, and Andrew absolutely was, or is, but you know, he'd often probably say he came second to my teaching and stuff. And now that I've had her, it's been a real challenge because you don't really have the choice. She is your priority. She is my priority. And so I've really had to, I suppose I've figured out how to work smarter because I don't have the time to not. It's honestly, that has been the biggest shift for me, is I just have to work a lot smarter when I'm in the club. Everything just has to be done at a faster pace because if I need to go and pick her up for daycare, I don't have the flexibility to go, I'll just hang around for another half an hour to get that done. I don't have that flexibility. I have to have her picked up by a certain time. So it just means that I definitely feel like I'm working smarter than I probably was because I definitely always known that I work better under pressure. And so I'm just constantly under pressure, I suppose.
And do you find that's helped with the perfectionist mindset, and that now instead of being like, oh, I want to work on this for a bit longer, you're kind of like, I have to get it done. If I don't get it done today, it's not getting done. So it's...
And I don't have the time to reflect.
Yeah.
Such, you know, I don't have the time to then go back and go, oh, could I have done that a little bit better? I mean, I definitely do in some degree, but nowhere near to...
Yeah. But actually, I want to redo that. It needs to be more perfect or whatever. You just got to get stuff done. And
And my decision making, wow, that has been the biggest change I feel for me having her.
How so?
And I can't even put my finger on why that's changed, apart from the fact that, as I say, I don't have anywhere near the flexibility like I used to. That's the only thing I can think of. But I just can make decisions faster. I knew when I went into the role as the club manager, that was one of the things that I was probably worried about. I thought to myself, oh, but will I have the ability to make those big decisions? I don't have, I definitely still have people that I can go and sort of talk through with if I need to, but often the decision stops with me, so I just have to make it. But I haven't had an issue with it. And in fact, some of my team have said to me since I came back from maternity leave, they were like, man, you just go boom, yes, do that, do that, do that, do that. And they're like, okay, sweet.
Yeah.
And it just gets done.
Is there a less fear of failure in that sense then? Or is it really more just about the time restriction that you have?
That's a good question. I think, I probably don't even think about that.
Right. It's not even in the realm. Interesting.
No.
Interesting.
No, and I don't, maybe because I don't have the time to reflect on that like I used to. Yeah, I don't know.
How long have you been in the industry now, in the health and fitness industry?
I've been teaching for, I would say, 17 years.
Wow. What do you think has changed since you started to where you are now in our teaching industry, in the group fitness industry?
Oh, there's lots have changed. I mean, what we're teaching our instructors now, the tools that we're giving to newbies is gold. You know, like back when I first started, you didn't have all of those tools given to you straight off the bat. Gosh, I remember I started teaching, I didn't even do my first module until I'd been teaching maybe 2 or 3 years before I even could get onto a module. Whereas those are just quick turnarounds now, and the content that you're learning in those modules is second to none, you know.
This is what Chris said in her episode too.
Yeah.
That when she first started, was 25 years ago, she was like, it was just four sets of 8 reps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now it's like boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the content that is given to instructors is incredible in comparison. When I started teaching, well, I don't know if I was teaching at that point, but they were on videotapes, you know, you put it in the video. But not only that, I think back then too, Les Mills was new, well, newish in the game. And so the instructors that they had, who are still phenomenal, but they were new and they've even grown with the content that has been developed in the back of the scenes.
If I were to give you a magic wand right now and you could make one change to the fitness industry and you're in charge, Nicky the Lord Lordster, what would you change?
What would I change? Oh man.
You said you're quick at making decisions.
I know.
Come on.
You know, I would wish that there was just abundance of money. Like buckets of.
What would you do with it? If you got given $10 million.
I know, to do whatever I want.
To do whatever you want.
Then you would just create the most, and I know we're going down this track anyway, but the most incredible clubs that we could with the most insane group fitness setups in the world. Like, you'd want to be just creating rock star shows 24/7. Like if we had, but you'd need the money to do that.
Every class is a live concert.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just goes back, it's a performance. It truly is, right?
Yeah.
It truly is a performance.
Yeah.
That pretty much leaves me with all my questions. I think that was a really good chat. There's lots of value in that. One more. When it's all said and done, what will you want your legacy to look like?
My legacy. Oh, honestly, the biggest thing for me is I hope that in my career in fitness that I've inspired people to be the best that they can be. And that's not just even, to my classes. I hope that in my classes I'm giving them the best experience, that moment of their day where they're just transported into another dimension where they get to forget about their lives and just have some fun. And then for my teams and my instructors, it would be, I hope that I've given them some real nuggets that they will then take on in their journey and that they can give to other instructors on their journey, because I know that's been a big thing for me. Yeah. So I hope that I have been able to do that for other people in my journey.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've been you're one of your recruits, Nikki. You believed in me before I had even believed in myself.
Oh yeah, I was actually just telling somebody about that today. I said, man, I saw this guy and I was like, I'm going to get him. And then I did, and then he was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, I'm just not giving up because I just knew.
Yeah, because I was at sprint and I was like, maybe maybe this isn't for me. And then I went away, and then, I don't know, I think it was another 6 months later, you came back and you were like, come do it. And I was like, okay, I'll give it another go. And here I am. I haven't looked back since. And I'm just so glad that you did come back for me, because I just didn't think I had it in me.
Oh, I just knew, but I'm so glad I did too, because, and it's just, the biggest thing for me is I just love seeing you guys grow and develop, like, the global filming that you were involved in, and there were a number of the guys that I've trained that were involved in that, and I was just, honestly, it was a tear-jerking moment watching you guys get up there and perform. I was like, this is what it's about.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
I hope that that's my legacy, is that I just have helped to develop people in the background that are better than me. I often say, this was something I read in a book. Actually, Joe Bowley, our old club manager, we read this book, and one of the things I took out of this was to leave your jersey in a better place from when you started. And I've always, since then, I've taken that with me continuously, and I just hope that, in anything that I do, that's what happens.
Even to this very day, the Nicky Lord era at Gala March still gets talked about.
Really?
Yeah, certainly, definitely.
I miss you guys
Definitely.
so much.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Have a great day.